If every conversation with your ex or your soon-to-be ex turns into a nasty argument, divorce can get expensive fast. Not to mention the fact that your blood pressure will be through the roof. Co-parenting will be nearly impossible. In this video, we're going to talk about 3 effective ways to just neutralize those nasty conversations so that instead of turning into arguments, they actually turn into conversations, negotiations, opportunities to actually work through and figure out all of these hard things that you guys have to deal with together. Because the reality is, if you have kids, you have to have a relationship with this woman. You might not want to, but you, for the sake of your children, you're going to need to. And even if you don't have kids, there are financial outcomes. There are things that need to be discussed, that need to be negotiated. And if every conversation turns into a nasty argument, your legal fees are going to get really expensive because every conversation is going to have to go through your attorneys. One of my clients in my Better Beyond Divorce coaching program recently came on a call with just the most amazing story. He said, every conversation I've had with my ex just turns into this nasty battle. Like, she starts out, she gets upset, she starts yelling and screaming. My blood pressure goes through the roof. I would start to react. He's like, but that doesn't happen anymore. He's like, the other day I had to call her, I had to give her some really tough news. I knew she was going to freak out, but I had my tools ready. I was able to stay calm, to stay emotionally regulated, and talk to her. And he was like, you know what, by the end, we ended up having a 2-hour heart-to-heart conversation. Remember, this is a call that started out with her yelling at him, blaming him. He's a narcissist. He's an asshole. It's all his fault. He's done everything wrong since the beginning. He took that conversation, the very same conversation, turned it into a 2-hour heart-to-heart where they ended up focusing on what was best for their 14-year-old son, came to an amicable agreement. If you could do that, if you had that kind of a superpower, how much better would this whole divorce process be for you and for your children? So that's where I want to help you get today. I'm going to give you 3 concrete tools to use to turn those conversations from battles into opportunities for real communication. I'm going to warn you before I share these tips that you guys, some of you are not going to like these, because the natural human response is to want to fight back. Right? Here is this person coming at you, being nasty, being aggressive. She's disrupting your whole world. She's causing you financial problems. She's tearing the family apart. The natural response is going to want to be to fight back. And for some of you, if you have been in a particularly toxic or even abusive relationship with your ex, standing up for yourself is actually a really important part of your healing process. Right? So your natural instinct is going to be to fight back, and your brain is probably going to be like, but Rachel, I don't necessarily want to smooth things over. That doesn't feel fair to me. But I will tell you this, you guys, we're not doing any of the things I'm suggesting in this video for her sake. All of this is for you. It is so that you get the best possible outcomes from this divorce, so that you get the best financial outcomes, so that you have the healthiest relationships with your children, and so that you move through this process with the least stress possible. All right, so the first thing that you need to do is clean up your mental image of your ex-wife, wife, or soon-to-be ex. So what is your current mental image of her? You've got to check. You guys, you have one, and you might not even be aware of it. So close your eyes, picture your wife. What image comes to mind? What do you see? What version of her do you see? Often when I ask men this question, I get, these interesting responses. Like, usually they're seeing her in anger, where she's like yelling, she's skeptical, maybe she's screaming, maybe she's got a finger pointed in your face. You often see some aggressive or scary version of her. Whatever your mental image is, take a moment, notice it, see it in your mind's eye, really look at it. How do you feel? What emotional state does that image of her put you in? If it's an aggressive mental image that you have of her, it probably puts you into a fight or flight response. It probably makes you feel nervous, angry, defensive, frustrated, afraid. And if that's the case, just notice those sensations in your body. Notice that feeling. How do you show up when you're feeling afraid, when you're feeling angry? Fight or flight changes the way we think, you guys. It changes the way we make decisions. It changes the way we communicate. It changes the tone of our voice, our posture, the words that we choose. It even changes our ability to listen and what we hear, what we pick up from a conversation with somebody else. So if every time you have an encounter with your soon-to-be ex, or you get a phone call or an email, if this mental image is active in your brain, it's going to make you feel this way. And when you're feeling this way, how is that going to impact the way you communicate or the decisions that you make? Usually, the mental image that men carry of their ex-wives or soon-to-be ex-wives is a painful image that puts them into a fight or flight response and causes them to make poor decisions or escalate arguments. Because here's what happens, you guys. Just like when you have this mental image of her being angry or mean, you feel defensive and afraid, you're more likely to lash out in return. That is now going to be her seeing an angry version of you, and the whole thing is going to just escalate. And this is what happens for so many couples in divorce. Every conversation turns into a big, nasty argument, and they can never find any common ground. And they both think that they're trying to reason with the other person, but there's no reasoning happening at all because everybody is in this highly activated fight or flight state. So one of the ways that we can help break that cycle is to change your mental image of her. One of my clients recently did this. He had to go back and see his ex. He'd had to move out of state for work. He was going back and he had to spend, I think, a whole weekend with her to take care of one of their younger children. And he was really nervous. He was like, Rachel, like, we have a lot of awkward interactions, and then sometimes that just turns into an outright argument and it brings up stuff from the past. And he's like, I've been doing better. I've been starting to heal and move forward. Like, I really don't want to have a nasty fight with her. Like, how do I avoid it? And we did this work. We looked at his mental image. We saw he had a very judgmental version of her in his mind that made him feel horrible. So we changed it. We changed it to the best version of her, the version of her that he wishes he could talk to, right? The healthiest version of her. Who is her best self? The best version of her you've ever known, the most reasonable, the most compassionate, the most kind. He put that image in his brain, and then no matter what happened the entire weekend, that's the only woman he spoke to. He never spoke to that nasty, aggressive, survival self, fight or flight mode version of her. He only spoke to the calm, grounded, compassionate, loving mother that she could be, the one that he knew was in there. And because he was only ever talking to that part of her, he stayed calm. He never got put into fight or flight, which means that all of his subconscious body language, tone of voice, eye contact, none of it looked threatening. He stayed calm, and even the moments that got a little awkward or where she got activated were quickly diffused. Nothing escalated. That escalation is a two-person dance, you guys. Human nervous systems co-regulate, which means that if she gets activated and you get activated and she gets we're just going to spiral up. You can interrupt that spiral by keeping your nervous system calm and grounded. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to pay attention to and control the mental image in your brain. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the nasty, aggressive version of her? Or are you talking to the calm, grounded, loving mother that is in there as well? Change your mental image, only talk to that version of her, and start to see what happens. People are pretty amazing, you guys. They tend to rise to their best selves, and they also tend to meet our expectations of them. When you meet somebody and you're expecting them to be aggressive, to be dangerous, to be contrary, to be unreasonable, that expectation communicates itself to them. Again, and all of that subconscious body language, eye contact, tone of voice, everything in your body tells another person what you think of them. And when you show up just waiting for them to attack, that tension in you is going to activate them. And those cycles will just spiral and spiral and spiral out of control, and they do, which is where a lot of divorce attorneys make an awful lot of money. I would much rather that money stay in your pocket and that you have a positive co-parenting environment for your children. So interrupt that pattern, picture her best self, talk to her best self, and do not negotiate or deal with her survival self or your own. All right, that first tip, you guys, is the most important. These other two will help, but if you try to do these things on their own and you're really activated, they'll probably backfire because that subconscious communication is so much stronger than any words that you use. That's why my one client was able to have a totally calm and grounded weekend with his ex. Even though in the past their conversations usually turned into arguments, he was able to do that not through any words he said or any script I gave him, but through his subconscious communication because he stayed super calm and grounded and only spoke to her best self. It's also the reason that my other client was able to take that phone call that should have, by all rights, turned into just a big blowout argument that ended with attorneys involved. He turned that into an opportunity for connection. And it wasn't the words he used, it was the way he spoke. But once you've got the way you're speaking and all that subconscious body language calmed down, then we can actually choose words that will help even more. So here's the icing on the cake. These are 2 other tips. One is to remove the word I from your vocabulary. You guys might have heard of I statements, like when you're communicating with somebody or in a conflict situation that you're supposed to say, like, when you do X, it makes me, I think this, and then I feel, right? Throw your I statements out the window. In fact, throw the whole word I out the window. I is, if you're with somebody who sees you as a threat in any way, if there is any kind of conflict relationship between you, and honestly, often even if there isn't, I puts people's hackles up. I tells me you're thinking about you and not about me. You're thinking about you and not about us. You're thinking about you, not about the relationship, not about the kids. Notice this in your own interactions. How do you respond when people come into a conversation or even send you an email and lead with, I want this, I need this, I am seeing this, I'm thinking this, I'm feeling this? How do you feel when somebody approaches an interaction with you in that way? You probably don't feel very good. For most people, it makes us feel defensive when somebody leads with those I statements, because we're already being set up to think we have to stand up for or advocate for ourselves. So delete that patterning from your language so that you don't trigger that defensiveness in her. Instead, you can use language like it sounds like, it seems like, it looks like. Instead of saying I think that, it looks like Timmy's going to be late for soccer practice, right? It sounds like we have different ideas about what the financial agreement should look like, right? That simple shift from I to it can diffuse and avoid, honestly, triggering in the beginning, it can avoid so much tension. This is actually a strategy that hostage negotiators use in their conversations. It looks like, it sounds like, it seems like. Another good verbal trick that you can use is to ask questions that require her to be an active participant in finding the solution. And this is contrary to what our brains want to do, you guys. Like, our brains want to tell her, like, you're being unreasonable, you have to see the light. But guys, when somebody tells you you're being unreasonable or insists that you see something their way, what happens? Like, usually you're not just like, oh my God, you're right, I am complete, what was I thinking? I'm such an idiot. No, usually you double down. Even if you see that you're wrong, if somebody is like pointing out that you're wrong, the human brain will double down and insist that it's right, even if you know better. Right? So you have to resist that temptation to just show her and prove to her how wrong she is and that she has to see things the right way, because all that's going to do is make her double down on her position. Instead, you can invite her to be more reasonable. Invite her to be an active participant in solving the problems that you guys are facing together. You can say things like, hey, you know what? It sounds like Timmy's going to be late for soccer practice. How do you think we can solve this problem in the future? What does she think we can do about it? You can do this with the financial difficulties too in the negotiation. Wow, like it looks like we're starting from really different places in terms of this financial agreement. How do you think we can come to some common ground? And then be quiet. Give her an opportunity to show up as a healthier version of herself. Right? It can be very disarming, especially if you guys are, if your normal conversation habit together, if the cycle that you've been stuck in together is one of confrontation and conflict, where you're both always trying to prove to one another that they're wrong and you're right. Like if she's trying to prove to you that you're wrong and she's right and you're trying to prove that to her, and neither one of you is respecting the other's opinions, and you're both just trying to insist that you're right, which honestly, you guys, is what happens in most divorces, because everyone's in pain, everyone is in fight or flight, everyone is freaking out in full-on survival mode, not thinking and often not even able to step into the other person's shoes. So when that's been the environment, and then you come to the table and you go, wow, like we're starting from really different places, like how do you think we come to common ground? You're asking a question, an open question that opens up a loop in the other person's brain. Human brains don't like open loops. We don't like unanswered questions. The brain can't help but start to try to find an answer when you open a loop like that. So open loops for her all over. Like, hey, okay, how do you see us moving towards an agreement? How do you see us finding an answer? wow, our schedules just totally do not work. Like, how do you see us solving this problem? How do we get creative here? Like, let her brain do some of that work by opening a loop. You don't have to find the answer and then prove to her that that answer is right. In fact, if you try to, you're probably just going to get a lot of pushback and argument and escalation, because she's doing the same thing, right? Her brain's trying to find an answer and then trying to force you to accept it. Your brain's trying to do that to her, and everyone's ending up just arguing and probably paying attorneys to litigate all of that for you. Instead, try inviting her to be capable, to be an adult, to help solve the problem that has to be solved between the two of you, and watch how that dynamic changes. I know, you guys, that these are not the strategies that your brain might want to use, right? It might be like, well, Rachel, but she's doing all of these horrible things and she's acting like a child and she's showing up in this way. And what most men do, what most humans do, is they show up in the same way. They say, well, she's being unreasonable, and then they're unreasonable. Well, she's being unfair, and so then they show up and are unfair. It's the tit for tat, the eye for an eye. And it's like a really deep-seated desire, it's a drive in all of us humans to fight back and defend ourselves in that way. But we have to be smarter than that, you guys. We have to step back and say, does this strategy work? Right? Is pushing back in this way, is playing the same games that she's playing, is it working? Right? Is this kind of fighting? Is this kind of trying to force the other party to accept what I know to be right? Is it effective? And if it isn't effective, isn't it worth trying a different path? If your ex or soon-to-be ex still has just too much power to get under your skin and rile you up, and techniques like these just are really hard to execute, then you need my Moving On 101 workshop. It is going to show you how to detach from all of her bullshit so that she no longer has the power to drag you in to one of these cycles of escalation. You've got to step out of that for your sake, not for hers, and for your future. If you're listening to these tips and you're like, okay, Rachel, maybe I'm going to try, but like she just really pushes my buttons, we need to create that space for you. In the video description below, you'll find a link to my Moving On 101 workshop. Go watch that workshop. It's going to give you the concrete tools and the same strategies that I use with my clients to help them get to a place where they can apply these kinds of strategies like I've shared in this video really effectively. So if you want results like the men that I told you about today, the one who was able to have that 2-hour heart-to-heart conversation instead of a big nasty fight, the one who was able to spend the whole weekend with his ex without any arguments. They even laughed together. They had some fun. It really helped him get closure because he finally realized that like he can have this relationship with her. It can be a healthy co-parenting relationship, but he didn't miss her anymore. He wasn't like longing to be back with her. If you want to get to a place like that where you can have really effective conversations, effective negotiations, and not let her live rent-free in your head every day, watch my Moving On 101. The link is in the video description. It'll be here on the end screen as well, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks for watching.